Hey everyone, this is James Lindsay, and you're listening to New Discourses Bullets, where I give a bullet point-like summary of a single topic from woke Marxism or wokeness overall that we need to understand so that we can defeat it. And I want to talk today about a bunch of ideas that come together. But first, I'm trying to remember to market myself a little bit, so please like, share, and subscribe, or whatever I'm supposed to say, in order to get people to remember that spreading this around helps. That's why I make it, and your subscriptions are valuable and appreciated. I want to combine a bunch of ideas that I've put out in the past about how abundance and wealth are created. I did a podcast about that, and about big government and incentive structures and the idea of first, second, and third person purchasing. And, I just want to talk about a bit of conventional wisdom that pervades kind of the conservative movement. And it is wisdom. It's correct. And that wisdom is not the whole story, but it is the belief that the main reason that we don't want to expand government power is because that our political opponents might eventually get political power, or even our enemies might get political power, and they will use those expansions of power that we've instantiated ourselves to our own advantage. They'll use them against us. But there's a deeper reason also why we want to have less government involvement directly in our lives. And the reason this is relevant is both on the woke left and on the woke right, there are arguments being made that we should be wielding the government in order to create the economy that works for the people, allegedly the people that it's supposed to represent. So the woke left, like Zohran Mamdani in New York City, is going to mobilize the government. He said in his acceptance speech of winning the New York City mayor election a few weeks ago, he said specifically that there would be no problem too small for government to care about. And so the idea is that they're going to weaponize government or utilize government in order to try to get involved in more and more things to create an economy, he says, that works for the people. It's not going to just work for the billionaires, some scapegoat class that they've decided to hold up as an enemy to the people. It's going to work for all of the people now. The government is going to solve the economic problems. On the other hand, we have Vice President J.D. Vance. A compilation video went out recently from the journalist Jason Hart, showing J.D. Vance over the last several years, saying at least like 30 times how he wants to wield government power and even expand government power to achieve right-wing ends. And there's a deep reason why this is a bad idea, whether it's Zohran Mamdani with left-wing policy and whether it's J.D. Vance with right-wing policy. And it's not just that. And I say that very, very specifically. It is that our enemies will take the power that we expand and use it against us. So will our opponents. But it is also something bigger. And it is that the government itself doesn't have the correct incentives to make things work. The government cannot wield the economy effectively for the people. And the reason is because the incentives are all wrong. The incentives are kind of at the bottom of everything. Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's investment partner until he died, famously said, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." This is an incredibly important concept. People follow incentives. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about good incentives or bad incentives. People follow incentives. If you create a tax hike or a fee or whatever to build 100-unit apartment buildings, people will find every excuse that they can to stop at 99. People will respond to incentives. And the fact is that the government intrinsically does not have the right incentives to be able to do the things that it claims to do in the name of the people or the common good or the greater good. Specifically, it does not have the incentives necessary to create prosperity, abundance, and wealth. And without those things as a foundation, you actually cannot improve things for the common good or the greater good or the people. You actually have to have the productive foundation in place. So it's not just, again, same language, it's not just that the private sector is the productive sector and that the public sector is a redistributive sector. It does not make, it takes and gives. But that's actually facile. There's more to the story. The government could, and historically it has been a productive entity. Both in communist and fascist regimes, it has been a productive entity. Lenin called this trying to figure out how to unleash the productive forces, and the fact that communists trot out all the time despite all the death, despite all the starvation, despite all the collapse, whether it's in the People's Republic of China, whether it's in Soviet Union, the Nazis bring it up about Germany, they did actually succeed for a while in comparatively unleashing productive forces, just not by the best means in the world. But what they ultimately ran into was this incentives problem. So it isn't just that the government cannot produce, it can only redistribute. The government can own an industry and can produce too. But why does that industry eventually fail? Why does it fail to meet the needs of the people, whether it's directly owned by the government as in communism, or if it's managed through a kind of a stakeholder model through the government in fascism? Why does it ultimately fail? And the reason is because the incentive structures for the government are not conducive to producing wealth, abundance, and prosperity. They can do a lot of things. They can't produce abundance, wealth, and prosperity. It's not just about the tyranny. I mean, for example, another example, look at the People's Republic of China right now. This is a communist state-run command economy. Its economy is a fascist communist stakeholder system hybrid, but it's a command economy model where people can make a profit after they satisfy the CCP, which is the party in action that controls what the demands are. So the deal is, in this system, you satisfy the CCP first. You satisfy the collective responsibility part of the equation first, and then you're allowed to make profit continuing to do whatever it is. So if, let's say, you're a factory like Nestle that makes bottled water. The government has a certain need for bottled water that they assess both for themselves and for the people. You satisfy that production quota, and then you're allowed to continue using the factory they let you use to build it for the government, to make it for the government, to make it for private sale, and you can profit off of it. That's the system. And it clearly produces, the Chinese system right now clearly produces, and it clearly wields its economy for its own national interests. The downside is, super tyrannical. But there is a question, I don't think it's a very hard question to answer, but there's a question is it worth it? You have this hyper-productive economy. It seems to work. You have crazy rich Asians, as the TV show calls them, who are coming out of this system. Is the tyranny worth it? I mean, if you ask the people who are being smashed by the tyranny, they'll say no, but if you ask the winners, they might say yes. Is that tyranny worth it? So that's not a very strong argument to say, well, it's tyrannical. Although I think it's a very clear, as a liberty-minded person, I think it's a very clear answer. It's just not strong enough. There is a deeper argument still for why this matters, and it's that governments don't have the incentive structures necessary to produce abundance and prosperity, period. They just don't have them, which means show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome has a very simple thing. It might work, but you are not going to produce abundance and prosperity, especially not in the long term. A lot of the fascist model works because of the ability to plunder. And when you can no longer plunder or rob the world or corner it into being a consumer economy for your manufacturing slave economy, like in the People's Republic of China, the whole thing doesn't actually work. And this problem is actually intractable and intrinsic to government. Why? Because as I described in a previous episode, they are a third-person economic entity in every regard, all the time, everywhere, always. So they will always only have third-person economic incentive structures that cannot produce prosperity, abundance, and wealth. They cannot do it. Why? Let's review the first, second, and third-person idea in economic models. I got it from my friend Bob McEwen, former congressman from Ohio, major anti-communist fighter in American history. He got it from Milton Friedman. It's very simple. You have three basic kinds of people involved in economic activity. First person buyers, second person buyer consumers, whatever you want to call them, and third person. So the first person situation, you're buying stuff with your own money, so you care about both quality and cost, so you balance those variables and decide what's worth it according to your needs. Your needs reflect problems that you have, whether those problems are real and immediate or whether they're kind of more superficial, like that you want to be entertained or want a nice cup of coffee or whatever it is. Second person is somebody else's money is involved in the purchase. You're the one who's going to consume the things, so you care about quality, and somebody else is paying, so they care about cost. So there's a mismatch between these different variables that have to be balanced. It could go the other way. You're the one buying for somebody else, so you care about cost, and they care about quality. Third person is that somebody is buying a product with somebody else's money that they're not also going to consume. So they don't care about cost or quality. That's what the government does. They're using taxpayer money, which is not their money, to buy something that they are not going to use because they're implementing it in the public interest. So they are third-person economic participants. First-person participants are you, individuals, individual corporations or economic entities, and they have to balance a lot of variables for themselves. It's not just cost versus quality, because a lot goes into what the cost is and a lot goes into what determines quality. What do these people have? What do all people have? Why is there economic activity in the first place? Because there are problems in the world and it is valuable to solve the problems. We could call this the problem-solving theory of value. I think it's better than the labor theory of value that the Marxists use. There are problems in the world. People want solutions to those problems. When it's your problem, first person, that you have to solve, first person, not your problem that somebody else is going to solve for you, you have a lot going into both the cost equation and the quality equation that you're balancing. You want solutions to your problems. First of all, you actually want the problem solved. You don't have the luxury of not caring because it's your problem. You want solutions that are efficient. In other words, you want them solved soon. You want problems that are solved effectively. You don't want a half-assed solution that doesn't work. You need an adequate solution that actually solves the problem. You ideally want something innovative where you've come up with some new way to deal with the problem, not some standard way, but you'll accept a standard way. Why an innovative way? Because you might come up with something new and better, a better way to solve a problem that wasn't thought of before, that's therefore more efficient, more economical, even maybe better in terms of its adequacy and effectiveness. You also want it to be economical because you care about what goes into the cost. So innovation has a lot to do with that as well. If you innovate a 10 times cheaper way to solve your problem than currently exists, or a 10 times better way to solve your problem than currently exists, that's great, and you're incentivized to do it. Now, when you add in this idea in free enterprise economics, which is the private sector, not the public sector, of a profit motive. The government doesn't have a profit motive. You have a profit motive, though. And what is the profit motive? The profit motive adds in this ability to scale your solution. You have a problem. You want to solve it. You want it to be efficient, effective, adequate, innovative, and economical, etc. You want it to be a good solution to the problem and across all those different variables. But you might also realize that other people have that problem too, whatever it is. Like if you need to drive in nails, it's a very simple example. You need a hammer. Other people might need to drive in nails, so they might need hammers too. So if you figure out that you can make a hammer and drive in the nail, and you realize other people might want hammers, you might want to make a lot of hammers because you can sell them. Because other people have similar problems to you and will buy good, effective solutions at a profit. So you can make money by selling solutions to other people's problems, regardless of whether or not you care about those people or their problems. So you get self-interest now motivates solving other people's problems. So you have all these variables as a first-person economic participant that you're balancing at once. And when the profit motive is in play, in other words, you have the ability to exclude people from your private property and set the terms of exchange, and everybody has that same equally, then all of a sudden you unlock prosperity and abundance. The magic here of the first-person centered economic situations, which is private sector with minimal government interference and application, not to say the government doesn't have legitimate roles in security, regulation, etc. It does. But the magic here is that the profit motive allows, like I said, it allows people to want to solve problems for other people whose problems they don't care about. Your problem is your problem. That guy's problem is that guy's problem. You have no reason to care about that guy's problem, even if your heart cannot expand 3 times that day. If your wallet can expand 3 times that day, you might build the thing that solves that guy's problem, because it becomes in your self-interest to come up with a solution to a problem that people have in the world. So there's no policy in the world that says, oh yeah, if we have, we have to go fix problems X, Y, Z in the world. We just have to solve those problems. And if we can benefit ourselves a lot by figuring out a way to solve problems that lots of people have and coming up with innovative, adequate, efficient, economical, scalable solutions that solve lots of other people's problems, even if we don't care about those problems or the people who have them, which you could care and it might give you extra benefit, then you unlock the magic of society. In fact, you unlock the magic of abundance and prosperity because you incentivize people to make reasonable but not unreasonable surpluses and to profit off of them. So the profit motive becomes the incentive structure that drives this. Third person participants in economic situations, that's the government, by contrast, are using other people's money, so they're indirect buyers. They don't care about the quality or a lot of these variables to solve other people's problems that they probably genuinely have better things to do and don't care about, or just because they're government, lazy, and incompetent and don't want to solve it. They're not solving a problem they have for themselves, so they have none of these incentives. The only incentives that they might end up having for things like efficiency, effectiveness, adequacy, innovation, and economy are by policy, and they have no incentives for scalability, very weak incentives, in fact, for innovation, because the profit motive is non-existent. You want to innovate because if you can figure out a way to do something 10 times better and or 10 times cheaper, then your profit scale goes through the roof because you can sell a better product for the same amount of money or more money while costing yourself less to make it, and you get to take all of the gravy. That's the idea. So government doesn't have the capacity to make people care about other people's problems. You cannot make people care about other people's problems. They don't even have the capacity to make people act like they care about other people's problems. And this applies reflexively to the government itself. The government itself can't make the government care about other people's problems. And as bureaucracy grows, it cares less and less. So big government is a problem. Vance and Mandami have it wrong. Profit also, by the way, does not make people care about other people's problems. It's not this magic caring formula solution. And this is where the communists and socialists get to play. Oh, these big business people don't care about the people they serve. Well, that's the point. They don't have to. They might, but they don't have to. It might benefit them if they do even more because they'll make a better product and be more in touch with their consumers, but they don't have to. Profit doesn't make people care about other people's problems. What it does is it creates an incentive mechanism in self-interest that incentivizes people to want to solve other people's problems, whether they care about those problems or those people in any respect at all. That unlocks abundance in society because this set of incentives, and it's crazy magical how this works, encourages people to create surpluses, which is abundance, but not excessive and stupid surpluses. You're not making 5 million hammers because some people need hammers. You have to figure out how many hammers you can sell. The market provides that information backwards. You don't need central planning to figure it out. People stop buying hammers, you stop making them. It's not that freaking complicated. You assess what the demand is. And so you make maybe 500 hammers, but you don't make 5,000 hammers and thus waste iron, waste wood, waste time, waste whatever energy goes into producing them. So people end up in this kind of a system where the government isn't doing all of these things, being incentivized to scale their solutions to other people's problems, but only to the degree that there's actually demand. And what does demand represent? Other people's problems. The need to solve other problems equals demand. Right? So it's the problem-solving model or theory of value. Thus, what we end up with in such a system is an efficient surplus production being strongly incentivized by independent actors who are free to remain completely ignorant and disinterested of all the varieties of experience for which their surpluses will solve the problems. They don't even have to know what problems they're solving. It's probably better if they do. They don't have to care an ounce about whether or not people need hammers to make hammers and sell them. Be better if they do, but they don't have to. And what they end up producing is called abundance, wealth, prosperity. The government doesn't have the incentive structures to produce these things, so even if it has good intentions or virtue or whatever, prudence or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't have the capacity to do this. All it has is the capacity actually to get in the way of this, where it comes into the economic question. So government doesn't have any of these incentives at all. Therefore, big government is a problem. You cannot take the government, apply it to the economy, and make the economy work for the people. Not even a benevolent dictator or a benevolent king has these incentives. He has other incentives. They scale so far, and then they don't scale any further. So since the incentives are wrong, even with the perfect ruler in place, it's going to devolve if it doesn't just go bad from the start. And eventually it will always go bad. You'll always end up with a bad king or a bad emperor, or you'll end up watching it devolve because power is inherently corrupting to the fallen human spirit. So it's not just that Mondami and J.D. Vance and Tucker Carlson and all these people talking about trying to get an economy that works for the people are wrong. They're deeply wrong at the key way that the economy actually works, and it's fundamentally un-American. And so that is a important point I hope people understand. The economic policy being forwarded by these wokes on the left and on the right, the stakeholder model, which is what it eventually becomes, simply doesn't have the incentive structures to create wealth and prosperity. So if you want a wealthy, abundant, prosperous society, that aka a society where people can solve more problems more efficiently for themselves, bigger government stepping in to control the economy will not achieve it. It will achieve the opposite. However much you think that the government can apply its values in a not value neutral way through the levers of power of the government, it has the wrong incentives to be able to create abundance, wealth, and prosperity. So you are going to trade. In reality, it's always trade-offs. You're going to trade abundance, wealth, and prosperity for whatever these social problems you think, you hope, you want to solve by applying the economy as a tool rather than recognizing what the economy is, which is the emergent forces that come up, or the emergent situation, economic situation that arises from the base rules of how people are able to produce and exchange their property. Thanks for listening. We'll do another one soon.